Hey guys, I just wanted to open up Maya 2018 and see if there are any major differences when we are rigging the character. Once he's been created in ZBrush, I just brought him into Maya for a quick warm-up. So let's go ahead and see what does it take to quickly set this guy up for some kind of a simple animation. All right, so as before, I'm going to go into my side view and begin just creating joints. So I'm going to actually go into my rigging, go to skeleton, create joins. I'm going to leave everything as is and begin just dragging the middle. So let's decide where the middle of the character is. It's obviously right here. So I'm actually going to create a joint here. And as you can see, mine is actually really small. That's okay, I can change that in a second. And I'm gonna make a joint. I'm not really gonna move his body, although we can. So maybe let's create a joint here, and then one for the tail, right? Just in case we wanna have some kind of a wobble in the middle. All right, so I'm gonna actually select this and join, go to my attribute editor, and let's crank up the radius of this guy. So right now it's at 2. I'm gonna set it to like 10. And your scale might be a little bit different, so just set it to what you think. How about 20? Something that makes more sense on your end. So my scale right now in Maya 2018 is set to centimeters, but for some reason this looks really small. But anyway, so this is going to be the middle of the character, and let's see, for the nose, let's grab our join tool and go from here to maybe 1, 2, and 3, something like that. Then I'm going to just make sure that this joint is selected, hold down Shift, click on this main one, and press P. Okay. And next, I am going to, now I'm seeing this joints because my button X-ray joints is on. So if you can't see your joints through the mesh, make sure that this is on, right? And another trick is if you accidentally begin to select your mesh in Maya, right? You can definitely go up here and make sure your little things are here expended. But in here, you can actually click on this little button. Once that's done, you will no longer select anything that has geometry. So in our case, maybe that's a good idea since we're just setting up joints. So again, I'm going to make sure that my X-ray joints are on, and I'm going to uncheck this little button to make sure that none of the meshes are selectable. It's just another alternative to setting it up with layers. All right. So let's see, so that's the side view of our skeleton. The only other thing that I would like to animate in this guy is maybe the wings, right? So I'm gonna click on my joint and go from here to the top. And as before, I actually wouldn't mind this being just a little bit larger. So I'm gonna set this to 20 as well. And you know what? This needs to be even larger. Again, don't worry about the scale because my scale might be different than yours. That doesn't really matter. Just eyeball it, you know, make sure it's easy to see on your end. You can, of course, adjust it to anything you want. All right, so now since the joint for the wings has been created on the side, I'm going to press space bar and jump in to the front view. And I'm going to move this, but remember, I'm going to move this, but you are not, what you want to, you don't want to rotate it. So you move it around, but don't rotate it. You want to make sure that all of your positions stay the same as you're creating the joints. I'm just going to move this over, but you see I'm moving it, I'm not rotating it. And so my Y is up and my X is left and right, so it's perfectly at 90 degrees on both of these, right? So that's important. And I'm gonna make this a little larger so it's easier to see. Okay, And now the only thing I need to do is just flip this joint over to the other wing. So to do that, I'm gonna go to skeleton and let's do a mirror joint. All right, and I want to flip it on Y and Z, right? Because that's the middle of my character. So Y and Z is what I want. It's already on that. And I'm just gonna simply say apply. All right, so as soon as I do that, it automatically creates the second joints for me. So now I have two of these guys. I'm gonna make sure I'm selecting both of them and spacebar my way to the side view, hold down Shift key and click on the middle piece here. Okay, and then I'm gonna press P. So now I have the nose, I have the body, I have the tail, and I have the two wings. So on my tail, let me make sure that this is easy to select on my end as well. Okay, so now if I click on the middle piece, obviously it's going to select the entire skeleton. So now all we got to do is just simply bind it or attach it to our mesh. Okay, so let's go into our perspective, and I'm going to turn on my joins, just spin around, see how that looks. Now if we want to flap both of these wings at the same time, it's very simple to do in the newer versions of Maya. All you got to do is just simply select both of them, go to your rotate, and make sure that if you don't see this, just double click on your tool settings. Make sure you can just simply double click on any one of these to see this box. And make sure that your setting is set to object, right? Now, since it's set to object, we can see that as we move one, this is how he's going to be flying. They just going to move in opposite directions. All right, so that's pretty easy. All right, so the next step is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and check this again and click on my mesh and hold down Shift and click on my joints. All right, go to skin, bind skin. Let's click on the option box and see what's going on here. So in here, I am going to leave everything as is, and just make sure that your bind method is set to geodesic voxel, right? That's the only change I'm going to do. Everything else, let's just leave it the same and simply say bind skin. Okay. Once that finishes, we can go ahead and uncheck this again because we don't really want to select it. And now let's test a few things before we jump into animation. Right, so if I grab the middle of the character, grab my move tool, I can move it around. That's great. Let's check the nose. The nose can stretch. If we wanted to rotate it, we can rotate it, move it around. Now I could also see that as I'm doing that, it's actually affecting my feet. So maybe we can fix that in a second. Let's check the tail back here. I'm gonna click on the tail. That's affecting my feet as well. Now let's check the wings. I'm gonna click on both, holding down the Shift key. Select both of these joins. All right, grab my rotate. Again, make sure you're an object and just flop them around. I actually like how the body is being controlled because I think that actually gives it kind of a realistic, more realistic effect. Like there's some muscles behind it. So I'm actually happy with that. And that pretty much is pretty awesome. The only thing I would like to do is let's adjust the weights for the back legs here when we move our tail, and when we move the nose, maybe we don't want the feet to move either. So what does it take in Maya 2018 to do the weight painting? Well, it's very similar as before, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that I can select my mesh, click on my mesh, and go to skin, and paint skin weights, right? So if I click on that, on the left side under tool settings, you will see this come up just like as we did before, and this should look really similar. That hasn't really changed much in Maya 2018. And now let's decide which joint we want to paint. So for example, let's go ahead and focus on this tail here. So I'm going to right click on this joint and go to select influence, and that's going to show me the influence for this joint. It's going to show me what polygons are affected by this bone here. And if you don't see the colors on yours, that just simply means you don't have the color ramp on. So go ahead and turn that on if you want. Blue again means it's cold, it's barely affected, and red being it's really affected a lot, right? So if we wanted to make sure that the legs are not moving with this joint, we obviously have to make sure that they are blue or black. And to do that, I'm gonna make sure that my paint operation is on replace. I'm gonna make sure that my brush is on solid, and the value is going to be 0, right? Because I don't want any animation or anything linked to this tail here. So I'm gonna hold down B, and while I'm hovering over the leg, I'm gonna increase my brush size and just simply start painting, right? So let's just paint all of this stuff and remove any color that has, and remember the blue doesn't really mean it affects anything, but if we wanted to, we could get rid of some of that as well, right? So maybe we can leave just some of this green, but not really that high up. So paint all of this, all of this. And I think that should work. So now if I grab my joint and just simply rotate it, you could see that some of these polygons are still moving, but the legs are not, because we completely detached them. And essentially that is what I wanted to do. All right, so that takes care of fixing the tail. Let's go ahead and make sure the nose is also not affecting these legs here. I'm gonna click on my character, click on my paint skin. I'm gonna right click on this joint and say select influence, and even though it's blue, it is being affected. So just as before, let's just go ahead and paint, or remove the paint, right? So remove all of this influence here. And we can even go a little higher, select influence for that joint, and as you can see, it affects a lot more of the character. So I just really don't want the feet to be affected by the nose. So paint all of that. So that that should fix it. Yep, it does. And that's pretty, that's fine. All right, so that takes care of tweaking the joints from weight painting. Next, let's set up a quick animation real quick, right? So to do the animation, right now my timeline has 120 keyframes. Let's set it to something much smaller, maybe 24, right? So 24 keyframes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the middle joint here, right click, and you know what, I'm actually going to uncheck my mesh. I don't want to select my mesh. So select the main joint and right click on the main one and say select hierarchy. Now that should turn all of your skeleton to white. And next, make sure your animation button is pressed right here, and simply press S, right? So once you press S, you see a red line appears, indicating that all the joints at once have been keyframed. So now if I go all the way to the right by pressing this fast forward button, go to frame 24 and press S. Again, I can set all the keys. Go to 12, and on 12 I'm just gonna click on this guy one time, grab my move tool and just move it up. So now if I press play, let's go to settings and let's make sure that my play every frame is on. And if we wanted to, we could set this to 24 frames per second. That's fine. Frame rate, if we wanted to, we could try 30. If this is being created for Unity, 30 is a good number to shoot for. But now if I press play, we should have some kind of movement here, which is cool. Now let's make his wings flap. So I'm gonna go in the middle, grab this joint and this, grab my rotation tool and just simply move them down. And let's go to 1 and move them up. And now I'm going to simply copy this keyframe, go all the way to 30, right click and say paste. Now if I press play, alright, so maybe as he's flying, the other thing we could do is maybe his nose can actually bob down a little bit. So let's grab this joint for the nose and kind of move it way down and press play. So we have this kind of a silly flying animation. So as you can see, not much has changed, but this is Maya 2018, and I just wanted to do like a quick update just to make sure you feel confident and comfortable in the latest version of Maya. All right.